Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnah is Erevin, Perek Ches, chapter 8, Mishnah Aleph, Mishnah 11. Okay, so you may notice that the word v'chein is the first word in your Mishnah. Some people have it, some people don't have it. Shtei diyutais zu keneged zu. Two upper stories that are opposite each other. So the case is that you've got these two upper stories facing each other. Below them is a chutzner, is a courtyard. One courtyard. That's all there is. Okay, one courtyard. Now, this courtyard is less than 4 by 4. Less than 4 by 4. And therefore, if you want to pour your water there, it's going to be a problem. Because with less than 4 by 4, we don't say there's enough area for it to be absorbed into. It's going to end up going to the public domain, and that's no good. And therefore, in this case, they're going to have to make this. They have to make their cesspool, right? That little cesspool that the water gathers into. Now, another point that we have to know about this is that this chutzner below, they didn't make an erev. The two people of the upper floors, they made no erev for that chutzner below. And the issue here is regarding pouring the water down from the upper floor into the courtyard. Now, and the case here is, the Mishnah continues, Miksasan asu uka, umaksasan loy asu uka. Some of them made a cesspool, some of them didn't. Meaning, it's a very small area to be dealing with, less than 4 by 4. But nonetheless, it seems like each one could have made their own cesspool, meaning each one closer to where they are to be able to pour the water down, right? They should be able to, they can make a cesspool below to be able to just pour the water into the cesspool. But the case here is that some of them made and some of them didn't made, meaning the people living on one side of the people on one of the upper stories, they made the cesspool below, but the people on the other side in the upper story didn't. So the Mishnah says, Miksasan asu uka, miksasan lo yasu uka. Some of them made a cesspool, some of them didn't. As sha'asu uka mutarin, those who made the cesspool can pour the water down into it. The shalo yasu uka asurin, those who did not make the cesspool under them may not. Now, let's think about this here. You know, the people who didn't make the cesspool, right? But at the end of the day, there's a cesspool in here, in this less than 4 by 4, which should seemingly satisfy them because at the end of the day, you've got the cesspool, the water's going to go into the cesspool. What's the problem? So we got to backtrack a little bit. Number one, so what Mishna is saying like this. The Mishna is saying that you've got these two upper stories facing each other. You got the chutzner below. They want to be able to pour their water into the chutzner. The chutzner is less than 4 by 4. If it's less than 4 by 4, you have to have a cesspool there in order to be able to do it. Now, we also said that this chutzner, there's no erev. They didn't make an erev. An erev chutzner is to share the chutzner. So if you think about it, the people who are pouring down into the cesspool are pouring down into a courtyard that there's no erev. There's no erev there. They're seemingly putting something from their private domain into the chutzner, which is common usage, that there's no erev. That should be a problem, shouldn't it? The answer is it's not a problem. Why? In this case. Because in this case, what's happening is they are not taking the water and just pouring it over into the cesspool. Rather, they have a balcony in front of their upper story. They're pouring the water on the balcony, and then the water pours from the balcony into the cesspool. So what's happening here is it's indirect. It's indirect. So in this situation where even if they were to pour directly into the chutzner, at the most would be a rabbinic prohibition. There's no deraisa there because it's a private domain. They're both private domains, but it's a rabbinic issue because of the fact that the rabbi said you have to make an erev chatzeris. Rabbis, right? And you have to make an erev chatzeris. So in this case where the whole issue at most would be a yesod rabbanan, rabbinic prohibition, they said, I think it means at least in this case with the water, they got to get rid of the wastewater, that you can pour it indirectly. That if you pour it onto the balcony, then from the balcony it goes into the chutzner, you're okay. Okay, you're all right. So that takes care of the erev chatzeris problem. But the Mishnah still says that only one side made a cesspool, the other side didn't. Those who made the cesspool can do this. Those who didn't use the cesspool can't. Why not? Why can't they do the same thing? It'll go indirectly from the balcony. Maybe it'll go into. I mean, the truth is, since they don't have a cesspool under them, right? Their water is going to go into the chutzner, and from the chutzner, it's going to go into the cesspool. But again, the same argument, the same reasoning should apply for them. What's the problem?
And it still goes on the balcony first.
Let's say, yeah, even if it were, it's still not helping by them. And the reason is because in this case, we have an extra problem. And that is that being that the people on one side didn't make a cesspool, which means that they're going to be basically pouring the water in. They're going to get, the water is going to be going into the courtyard first. So they may say, instead of messing up the courtyard, they'll forget that there's no Erev Chatzeres. And they'll say, instead of messing up the courtyard with the water, we'll just take the water downstairs into the courtyard and dump it into the cesspool. But that's a problem because you can't carry into the chutzner. You can't carry something into the courtyard without an Erev Chatzeres. So because of that additional concern, that's why we say that the people on the side who didn't make the uketz, they can't pour the water. Because if we allow them to pour the water, we're afraid they may come to carry the water down into the courtyard instead of spilling it into the courtyard. And therefore, they cannot pour the water because they didn't make an uketz under them, and there's no Erev Chatzeres. If they would have made the cesspool under them too, the same way the other people were not concerned they're going to carry it downstairs. Why? People that make the cesspool, we don't say, well, we're not concerned about them carrying it downstairs because they have the cesspool right near them. They're not going to make a mess out of the courtyard. If there were two cesspools here, then both sides would have been okay. And if there would have been an Erev Chatzeres, you wouldn't have had any concerns either because you could actually carry it into there. But being that the case here is that only one side made the cesspool and there is no Erev Chatzeres, therefore the side that didn't make the cesspool cannot pour their water even indirectly into the chutzner. That meaning to pour it on their balcony, which would indirectly go into the chutzner, into the cesspool. They still can't do that because we are concerned that they may decide to carry the water downstairs instead, which would be carrying into the chutzner where there is no Erev Chatzeres. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Question is